All right, everybody, welcome back. Today, we're going deep, and I mean deep, into something that's honestly got me scratching my head.
Oh, laid on me.
It's the energy crisis gripping Iran. We've got these excerpts from the New York Times and the Washington Post, and, well, let's just say things are pretty messed up over there.
Iran, huh? Energy crisis? I mean, isn't that the country basically sitting on a sea of oil and gas?
Exactly. You'd think they'd be swimming in energy, right?
Right.
But they're struggling to keep the lights on, literally.
Now that is a head scratcher.
Yeah. Schools are going online, factories are shutting down, even highways are going dark. I mean, can you imagine that? Driving down a highway in pitch black?
Not exactly a recipe for a smooth running economy.
No kidding. And the New York Times, they don't sugarcoat it either. They're saying government offices are practically ghost towns, universities are forced to go remote, industries are at a standstill.
Wow.
The economic losses, get this, are estimated to be in the tens of billions of dollars. It's insane.
Tens of billions. That's a massive hit.
It is. So I'm hoping you can help me understand this. What's at the root of this whole crisis?
Well, the sources point to a whole bunch of factors, kind of like a perfect storm, really.
Okay, lay it on me.
Let's start with sanctions. Those have really crippled Iran's ability to get the latest technology for oil and gas production.
You mean like the equipment they need to get the oil out of the ground and refine it?
Exactly. They can't easily import the kind of advanced drilling rigs or refinery tech that you see in other oil-producing countries.
So even though they have all that oil and gas underground, it's like,
Like having a treasure chest, but not the key to open it,
it's a
right?
perfect analogy.
Then you've got the whole issue of governance, or maybe the lack thereof. The Times talks about mismanagement and even corruption within their energy sector. Money that should be going to uprunning infrastructure is, well, who knows where it's going.
Meaning their pipelines and power grids are probably a mess.
Yeah, think leaky pipelines, overloaded power grids, refineries that can't keep up. It's a recipe for disaster.
And speaking of disaster, what about that brutal cold snap they had? I read the government had to make a tough choice. Cut gas to homes or power plants.
Yeah, that was a real Sophie's choice. Ultimately, they decided to keep people warm, which meant shutting down, get this, 17 power plants, completely offline.
17. And what about the rest?
Others are operating, but just barely, not nearly enough to meet demand.
So even if they had all the fancy equipment and perfect management, they're still kind of stuck with.
Outdated infrastructure. That's another big one. You're talking about pipelines built decades ago, probably back in the 70s. Corroded, leaking, constantly needing repairs.
It's like trying to run a marathon with shoes that are falling apart.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of consumption. Iranians use a lot of energy.
Maybe because it's so heavily subsidized.
That could be a factor, yeah. Or maybe just a lack of awareness about conservation. But high demand combined with those production and distribution problems, it's a recipe for an energy crisis.
Makes sense. But this isn't just about pipelines and power plants, right? There's a whole geopolitical angle to this, too.
Oh, absolutely. The Washington Post, they talk about the rising tensions between Iran and Israel, even missile strikes on both sides.
And how does that play into the energy crisis?
Well, one thing the Post mentions is that Iran's ballistic missile production seems to have taken a hit after those alleged Israeli strikes.
So you're saying there could be a connection between the conflict and the energy situation?
It's hard to say for sure, but it does raise some questions. Were those attacks intended to make the energy crisis even worse, maybe by targeting supply lines or something? Does this whole thing expose a weakness in Iran's energy sector?
It's like everything is connected. The politics, the economics, the infrastructure, international relations, even the weather.
Precisely. And this isn't just an Iranian problem either.
What do you mean?
Global energy markets are all connected. What happens in Iran can have ripple effects across the world, maybe even affect prices or supplies elsewhere. It's something to watch carefully.
Wow, that's some seriously heavy stuff to think about. Thank you for breaking it all down for us. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Iran's energy crisis. It's a tangled web, that's for sure. And it leaves us with a lot more questions than answers.